That does sound very, very good. That does sound good.
Mhm.
So, whilst you're talking about Bonnie Prince Charlie, um, I've I intercepted some kind of a message from Claire, and we've been chatting a little bit this week, and on one of her projects, she actually found the remains of a elephant's tooth.
Oh,
Is that Claire from here?
Yeah, that's Claire from there.
Oh,
Yeah,
she's been on Arran. She's been on the Isle of Arran digging, hasn't she?
gosh.
Well, they've actually found an elephant's tooth, and it's a bit vague where this elephant's tooth is actually from. But I don't think it's actually from Arran, and I'm probably not allowed to say where it's from. I think it's actually local, and it might be something to do with a circus or something. I don't know. I need, but there's an elephant's tooth that she's got, which is which is quite strange. So anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Right, Peter, anything you'd like to tell us this week?
No, not really. I haven't been out very much. No, sorry.
Okay, right, okay. Ooh, right, David, other than going for his ice creams,
Yeah.
plural.
No, sorry.
Okay, nothing from David. Right, so Pat has to say something because I'm still doing something on in the background. But whilst Pat's trying to work out how to put a bloody mic on, right, which will probably take 5 minutes. Nice shirt as well, Pat. I like that. Anything you? Oh, Pat, you got no news.
Oh no, sorry.
Okay. Well, the saving grace now is actually going to be Margaret. Margaret, usual rule is you've got to say something for 30 seconds, even if you've got to make it up.
Do you want to hear about the sea people, or do you want to hear about the Battle of Flodden?
Both. Can't we hear both?
Both. Yeah. Seeing as this is a multiple choice question, we want both, but we want the Battle of Flodden first.
Well, there was a programme, I think it was a programme, or I've read it or something. It was Tony Robinson did a programme, and it was about ordinary people back in the day instead of kings and queens and the nobility. And it was about ordinary farmers going to fight at the Battle of Flodden. And I didn't realise that they took their wives and children with them. And he'd got information about one particular farmer who he had to fashion his own weapon out of a farming tool, which was quite lethal actually. And then he had to take his wife and children and march 150 miles to the battleground.
Yeah.
You don't hear about these things, do you? About what the ordinary people had to do.
No. Go on, carry on. We're into this. Yeah,
the wives, I can't remember the background of the battle.
I'm going to give you some detail now. Just keep talking.
James, one of the Jameses, the king had gone overseas, so the empire was there for the taking.
Yeah.
England was there for the taking.
Right.
So the Scottish king, it was one of the Jameses, I can't remember which one, decided to march into England to take the crown. And
do you want some more details on that? Say that again.
England won with their farming majority, with their lethal farming weapons that they made themselves. And they took the women along because they could pick all the bits off the fields at the end of the battle.
Well, actually, to give you some meat on the bones, it was on the 9th of September, 1513. And there's a little bit of detail. It was at the end of fighting season because medieval people at that time, there was a window of fighting. So you stopped fighting sort of late September, October time, and you didn't fight after that. But it didn't really work that way, but that was sort of the mindset. It was an English victory on the 9th of September, 1513 in Branxton, Northumberland. The Battle of Flodden, there's the Flodden Memorial on Piper's Hill.
Mm.
King James IV of Scotland died along with 4 of the major earls of Scotland. They had an army of up to 40,000 men on the Scottish side. Up to 14,000 died. The English, on the other hand, had an army of 26,000, and only 1,500 of them died. And it's interesting to see what you're saying, to be honest.
Well, it was that the Queen was kind of left in charge. Was it Henry VIII had gone overseas? It would have been Henry VIII, wasn't it? So was it Catherine of Aragon?
Hang on a minute. It's 1513, then it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be early on in his reign, isn't it? Hang on.
So he'd gone over to France, and I think it was Catherine of Aragon had to get the troops together herself.
Right.
So this chap that they were focusing on was English, and he'd come 150 miles away across country to do battle. But it was quite interesting to hear about the ordinary people for a change.
Yeah.
And the other one was the sea peoples that they talked about at the end of the civilization in the Levant. The breakdown, the ending of the Bronze Age over there. And they talked a lot about sea peoples, but they said it was caused, they think, by drought, famine, earthquakes, and these would have been refugees from, they think, Sardinia and Sicily, much like the boat people that we have today. They said there were amazing similarities between then and what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, well, that's not a good sign, because the boat people wiped out whole civilizations.
Well, they said that they didn't conquer, they just settled.
It really depends. They come out. It was the fall of the Hittite kingdom.
Yeah.
The fall of the Mycenaean kingdom.
Yeah.
Almost the end of the Egyptian kingdom. So
the Egyptians didn't do too badly.
They actually managed to defeat them. Yeah.
But they said it would have only needed one of those things to happen to disrupt the trading route to Afghanistan. They got exactly tin from there.
That's true. Anyway, thanks for that.
I've been reading a lot of my books.
Oh, so you should. Well, we've got a couple of interesting people online, actually. Yeah, he did say Queen Catherine of Aragon, regent for few months, and so basically we've got somebody watching from India as well. So yeah, wonderful stuff. So yes, I'm just gonna type something on now. So I'm just gonna, somebody's asking me something, and then we're gonna get straight into what we're meant to be doing. So I'm just typing this on here. Popular tonight we are. And oh yeah, this person actually wants to join us online. So yeah, so they'd have to have the Zoom link. So yeah, I'm gonna ask them to email me at, yes, there you go. So we're gonna get started.
From India? Is that
from India? Amazing. Yeah, India.
International now.
So yeah, international. So right, we are going to be looking at Mid-Howe on Rousay, and this is a site that Pat has actually been with me to, and it was a rather interesting site. So I've got today, it's all booked. We've got Joshua Pollard's comments, Neolithic Britain. So he's going to mention a couple of lines, so that's going to be useful. We've got some information from Scottish Heritage, and we've got some information from James Dyer. We've got another source, and we've got my brain as well, because I've actually been there. So we're going to crack on, and we're going to put the images straight on. And here we go. and let's have my images. And right, here we go. Hang on, always seems to come at every single lecture that happens. Hang on a minute. Right, okay. Right, let's just try and get these images up. And gallery. And we've got a few images here today. And we're going to go directly to show you where we are in the world. And this is a site that is absolutely fascinating. So let's first of all ask any of you other than Pat and myself, have any of you been to the site of
No.
Mid-Howe, which is on the island of Rousay, of the Orkney archipelago? Has anyone else actually been there?
No.
Right. Okay. You've answered for everyone, which is good. Pat has. So so it's a site for me that's amazing because it's on an island. It's on an island that's full of archaeology. It's an island that rewrote the book in a way in regards to Neolithic archaeology in Britain. If anyone's ever heard of Lord Colin Renfrew, this is a guy who was responsible for the university archaeological textbook called Archaeology, and he wrote it with a chap by the name of Barn. So Renfrew and Barn, his book on archaeology. And Colin Renfrew said about the island of Rousay, the island of Rousay itself, which is that island there, is a detached island from the mainland. He said that the island in the Neolithic period had been divided into settlements, tombs, settlements, tombs, settlements, tombs. And he basically said that there was a high correlation between the tombs and the settlements. So in other words, what we're saying in a moment is that Neolithic people were family-based, and they had these tombs, and he's saying that there was quite a number of these tomb-based settlement communities on the island of Rousay. Now, that's just giving you a bit of backdrop. And what we have here is the wonderful islands. And by the way, there's loads of people talking online, so I'm going to try and keep everything together today as a true professional. And we've got my friend Jarden online who's helping out, which is great. So I would like to say as well that if anyone, and I was thinking this quite deep today. I was thinking if anyone wants to study Neolithic Britain, they should go to Orkney. But then again, I thought, right, hang on a minute, I'm obsessed with Orkney, as you know. So you need to go to some of the Hebridean islands as well, if you want to get a good overview of the Neolithic period. And if you want to get even further overview of the Neolithic period, go to Wiltshire, go to the likes of Avebury and Stonehenge. So if you can look at those three different areas of Britain, you can get a good overview of Neolithic Britain. But as you know, there's a hell of a large number of Neolithic sites across Britain. And if anyone asks me what is the most important prehistoric periods that we actually see massive changes, I'm reluctant to say the Neolithic period, but I'm going to say it's the Neolithic period. It's where we got the great massive monuments. And even though we've got lots of Neolithic monuments in Britain, one thing that what I will say is that it's only a small proportion of the Neolithic landscape that's actually survived. That idea of the landscape, that sense of connected, cohesive landscape that is definitely referred to as the Neolithic. And you could say as well that the Neolithic, this is a mad statement to make, that the Neolithic can be compared with the modern period, in that massive building projects are going on in the Neolithic period as massive building projects are going on in our modern day and age. Obviously, you can't compare HS2 with the building projects that were going on in the Neolithic period, but the proportion of community that was thereabout in the Neolithic period is quite great, what they actually achieved. So let's have a little look at this map. And what we have, we got Mid-Howe, we got Rousay. It's a very strange shaped island. And you can get an idea, there that we've got, you've got these little sort of areas where you've got green and you've got the upland areas. So each of these territories that Lord Renfrew was describing would have had an upland area, would have had a coastal area, would have had a tomb, would have had a settlement. This is all in the Neolithic period, and where this is his idea, and we're going back 5,000-6,000 years ago. Mid-Howe is one of the strangest, one of the most oddest archaeological sites from the Neolithic period that you would ever get to visit. It's the one part that we went to, which was in an aircraft carrier, not an aircraft carrier, close, in an aircraft hangar. It's an archaeological site that's displayed in an aircraft hangar, which is something that I keep going on about quite a lot. What I do say in archaeology is, if you're going to display archaeology properly, stick it in a building, protect it, like they do in the Middle East, like they do at Mid-Howe. It's possible they can do it. Is this aircraft hangar building that they constructed over the Mid-Howe tomb? It is actually it is amazing. It's amazing. You go in there, it's huge. And you can see that. And if you look there, you can get an idea. You know, that white box there, that's the building that it's in. And there's the Mid-Howe Broch as well, which Pat also visited with me. So and one thing that we do know is that all of the stone along the coast is what's used for the construction of the brochs. The brochs are those conical shaped towers. The burial chambers, it uses the stone quarried from the beach. These are lids of flat stone which can be easily quarried in a horizontal context. It's amazing. So before we actually get into any detail, before we say anything else, before we actually look at the archaeology, before we actually get any further with that, what it would be good to do is basically tell you what the little information that Historic Scotland tells us about this site. Now, it says that this site itself is one of 3 that's on display on Rousay. Mid-Howe is one of 15 Neolithic chambered cairns on the island of Rousay, and by far the largest and the best to visit, and the best protected. It's saying a modern hangar protects the tomb from the elements. Well, built in 1947. You wouldn't get away with it today, right? You wouldn't get away with it today. But this hangar itself, a modern hangar, protects the tomb from the elements, and visitors can admire the compartments or stalls from above by walkways. Again, it's another site that you actually look down. You actually look down into the archaeology rather than actually walk through it, which means that the site is actually quite protected. One person's made the comment online, yes, protect history and heritage in buildings or glass. Don't leave it to all the elements and climate, etc. That's a really good point to make. And that's something that's very much rectified at the site of Mid-Howe on Rousay. Chambered tombs of this kind were communal burial places. I feel for family communities on Rousay, because, you know, remember, if we're thinking that we've got a family and we've got a family of like 15, 20 people, and there's 15, 20 of these on Rousay at one point, that's quite a sizable population for quite a small island. And when you think about it, the island of Rousay today has less people living on it that would have lived on the island of Rousay 5,500-6,000 years ago. So what we've got, as we look into this site now, we're actually looking into it. What we've got with this site is this site was probably frequently opened, and people would walk down in between these stalls. And if we look at a little bit of a plan, there we go. I want to get, hang on, oh yeah, there's the plan. People would have walked down, there's the entranceway there, they'd have walked down, you've got the stalls, you've got human remains on shelves going all the way along, all the way over to this point at the end. Now, when this site was originally opened, it wasn't the first time it'd been opened in the past. There's activity that goes back to the Bronze Age. Bronze Age people used it as well, and it's sort of that lovey-dovey idea of archaeology that I say lovey-dovey. You know, some people would say that a monument like this would be visited on a regular basis. People would look at the human remains that were on the stalls on the right and maybe on the left as well. And there was found at least 25 sets of human remains here. These are, you know, skeletal remains, you know, quite good collections of skeletal remains, lots of skulls and so on. So this is very, very well worth a visit. This is an important archaeological site. This is basically what Historic Scotland says about the site. Don't say a lot, but they give you a nice sort of sense of an introduction about this site. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back and we're going to sort of flow through. Look at that. It's beautiful, isn't it? Look at the stonework on that. Really good image, that. And look at the way it's constructed. Again, what did we do a few weeks ago? We looked at the wonderful site of the Nessa Brodgar, which we will be looking at in a few weeks' time. We're going to have the update on the excavations. I do believe that the Nessa Brodgar excavations formally have now completed. I do believe that they're putting tarp over the site and you know, tires down to sort of keep it there, and then we'll get the next excavation for the Ness of Brodgar next year. But you can see that this stonework is very, very similar to the stonework that we find at the Ness of Brodgar. And the one thing that I will say, and I just a reminder, and I'm going to get Rona to send you a plan of the Ness of Brodgar. So when we do the Ness of Brodgar, when we do the Ness of Brodgar lecture, you'll have the plan in front of you, and I say building 23 and building 15 and all the rest of it. You'll be able to read it. So whenever you get that plan, make sure you keep it safe. So got some nice images, and that's looking up, and you can see that from these little notice boards, the site is towering. It's amazing to see. And obviously this walk board, again, within an aircraft hangar setting. And before we actually go on, I've got to show you images of this aircraft hammer. Look at that. And look at the size of this building, just for one single archaeological site. This is absolutely amazing that they love this site so well, and they feel that this site is so important. It is so important as a demonstration of an amazing archaeological resource that has been excavated. So to give you an idea, what I said, we've got a few writers that have written about this locality, and what I'd like to do is maybe I'd like to read this section out by Joshua Pollard in Neolithic Britain, and it would be nice to sort of show you a little bit of a plan. There we go. Now, got lots of things being said online, which is great. Keep it coming. So it's said by Joshua Pollard, a large number of megalithic tombs have been excavated across Britain. Though the poor preservation of human bone within many due to acidic soils has led archaeologists to focus on matters of architecture and construction than funeral rituals associated with them. Now, maybe I'm a victim of that because I do talk a lot about the architecture. I do talk a lot about the skill, but why not? As with medieval churches, the use of some of these tombs could be long-lived, undergoing several phases of building and alteration spanning periods of centuries. And the thing is also that obviously generation after generation. So complex sequences of constructions like this one can be seen in Wales, can be seen in Ireland, it can be seen across Scotland and obviously England. One of the sites I want to look at in the future as well is mentioned by Joshua Pollard here, Wayland Smithies, the Wayland Smithy site near Uffington, which is in Oxfordshire. This is a megalithic tomb, which is also equally impressive, just like Tinkerswood Burial Chamber, just as this one. These tombs incorporate stone blocks weighing up to several tons. And if we think back to this site as well, and we think of these upright stones, even though these don't weigh even though these stones don't weigh tons individually, they're naturally extremely heavy. And also thinking about this, the efforts involved in constructing these tombs, including this one, is enormous. Speaking of considerable skill and coordination. And again, this sense of coordination, I don't use this word coordination very much. And we're going to say it. Nowhere is this seen more dramatically than amongst the passage graves of the Boyne Valley in Ireland and the Orkneys. And this is no such exception. The quality of the masonry employed in the passage and chamber of the tomb of Maes Howe on mainland Orkney is unsurpassed in northwestern Europe. Again, it's talking about Maes Howe. Massive slabs of evenly splitting local sandstone used in its construction were positioned with such skill that a knife blade can hardly be pushed between them, but also the equal skill to create this wonderful monument at Mid Howe on the island of Rousay. Now, again, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this site with a little bit more detail now. We're going to give you a little bit about the idea of the excavation of the site, and that's where we're going to go. So if we keep that there, I get my notes up on this screen, and we can now crack on. So here we go. Bingo. If you can bear with me a second. Right, okay, here we go. So the Mid Howe chambered cairn, south of the island of Rousay, is very near a major broch, which is an Iron Age site. Also to the south is another massive, amazing archaeological site, which we will talk about in the future, not today, is a site known as Swandro, Iron Age houses. When we went to, when me and Pat were there, we went to Mid Howe Broch, we went to Mid Howe Chamber Tomb, which is the one we're talking about. We went to St. Mary's Church. We didn't go to the Swandro excavations because I think it was high tide that day or something. We couldn't get down to it, but we will look at the Swandro site in the near future. So all of this is sort of grouped within the same landscape. So it's only the Iron Age site is only 500 meters away from the Mid Howe site, not really much at all. And the word you're wondering what Mid Howe means, i.e. that word Howe, Howe. What does that mean? The word Howe from higur, which basically means mound or barrow. The mound, the hirgur. So it was probably given a name back in the day, the hirgur, but it's obviously mid howe, so it's the mid two, in other words. So this is a complex, really interesting world of archaeology, and very, very much well worth visiting. Now, one thing that we do in archaeology is when you're reading books, and obviously the big book reader amongst all of us is, in fact, our wonderful Margaret. Now, when you're reading, when you're going into the reading, what archaeologists do, they give names for these types of sites. And this type of site, if we go to the plan, the type of site that this is known as an Orkney Cromarty type chambered cairn. And Orkney Cromarty, basically it means that it's a long funnel shaped chamber with little stalls. Stalled cairns. Tombs of this type are often referred to as stalled cairns due to their distinctive internal structure. And interesting enough, we're going to jump into this. One archaeologist refers to this monument. It's a chap by the name of Castledine. He refers to this monument in his own words. It's like walking into the monument is a little like walking into a miniature church. The straight central aisle flanked on each side by pillar-like slabs. We need one of those images, don't we, to sort of illustrate this. Pillar-like slabs. There they go. So a bit of an angle there, but pillar-like slabs, and culminating in a shrine-like end compartment at the western end. The stalls or bays on the northern side of the chamber were fitted with low stone benches or shelves on which the bones of our ancestors were laid out. And one of the things I can remember when we were there, and we were with the Orcadian county archaeologist Julie Gibson. I think she's still a county archaeologist, but the county archaeologist Julie Gibson, she would say, well, what the shelves themselves, most of the shelves are collapsed now. The shelves themselves, you'd have placed a body on top, and after the body had rotted down, then you would collect the bones and put them under the shelf, and then you put fresh human remains there. That's the idea anyway. That's one way of looking at it. So low stone benches, shelves on which the bones of the ancestors were laid out. So again, this whole thing is distinctive. It's very, very different. And the problem is trying to get an image of this that shows the whole thing photographically is difficult, because there's been an aircraft hangar over it since 1947. So trying to get modern photographs, seeing the whole thing in one is very difficult. That's not one thing that I've managed to achieve today. In other words, you could think about this monument as you go down the entranceway, these little stalls on the left are almost like going down a passageway with little compartments, almost as if they're horse stalls. Now that's really, really interesting, because initially when the site was initially found, they actually thought this was actually a building to keep horses, not human remains, which is a rather interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So the earliest versions of these seem to come from the north of Scotland, where in fact they were much smaller. And if we go back to the plan again, the earlier versions of Scotland seem to be a little bit of an entranceway with about a few little stalls down a little passageway, not as many as this. So again, it sort of developed that was on sort of northern Scotland, and then sort of this got more and more elaborate. In Orkney, the tombs become more elaborate, as we've actually seen, as we've mentioned earlier on. We mentioned Maes Howe earlier on. And so Mid Howe is an extreme example of having a central passage with stalls on the left and the right. And this itself is the internal measurements themselves. The passageway itself is nearly 24 meters long. So the monument in length is a lot longer than that. And the stones themselves, as you go down, if we look at those stones, these stones, as I said, these may not be tons in weight, but they're not too far off it. These stones themselves are in fact 2 meters in height. And it's also said as well that the full height of this, the full height. So if we go back to that little image that we had a few moments ago, looking at that there, the whole height of this is 4 or 5 meters in height. So it's a massive monument. It towers. And the interesting thing is it's all made of stone. It's a definitely going into the ilk of a massive, impressive stone monument. Very, this by far is the one to visit. It's said that there's more of these on Orkney, and there's 1 or 2 of these that haven't actually been excavated yet. So we might actually get more data from them. We might actually get much more information from this absolutely fascinating, amazing archaeological site. So, like most tombs in Orkney, the original roof was gone, replaced by as we know, a hanger-like structure that protects the site. Now, again, I'm thinking to have roofed this thing would have been quite a major feat. And sometimes I sort of say, right, was it roofed? Right, was there a roof along the whole thing? Could it have been a timber roof? Right, where's the evidence of massive slabs? Now it probably undoubtedly had a roof, because one of the things, the archaeology in there tells us that it must have been protected by something at some stage before the roof collapsed inwards. So that's a point I wanted to make. So now the nature, my own note says the nature of the original roof is unclear. It may have consisted of flat slabs of flagstone at a height of maybe 3 meters, and then it was covered with stones above. Difficult to say. Alternatively, it may have been vaulted. It may have actually had some kind of vaulted roof, like revetted, like Maes Howe. It's very difficult to say. So the one thing about this monument is that, dating back to between 5,500 to 6,000 years ago, sometime about 5,000 years ago, the cairn appears to have been intentionally filled with debris after hundreds of years of usage. Now, we don't really know what's going on, but it was deliberately filled. Now, again, that word cairn, C-A-I-R-N, cairn, this site is a cairn. Now, the word cairn definitely refers to stone sites. When we use the word barrow, that's usually referring to earthen sites. But this cairn site itself, again, an elaborate cairn site itself, they deliberately filled it in, which is really, really strange. The size and complexity of the interior of the cairn must have exerted a powerful influence on those entering it. Now, again, when obviously, let's be realistic here. You know, it never looked like an aircraft camp. It never looked like an aircraft hangar. But when you, if again looking and seeing the majesty of this site, the impressive site as it is today, must have been massively impressive in the past. And it's likely, as we will go on to say, it's likely to have been constructed in stages. As you know, as the one thing that you can clearly see is a load of stones here and another stone face. So it's been built over time. So it's been added to, it's been changed. Now, moving on to give us a little bit of detail about this site to try and understand it, and to try to throw as much as we can into this. What we've got to do, we've got to look at the plan, which we're going to go on to now. And there's the plan of the site, and it's showing you where lots of skulls were being found, and you know, some of the bodies were relatively complete, and you got sort of crouch burials, and you know, in all of these, that one there, you got 2 crouch burials, and you got different ways people are actually buried in there. You have headless skeletons, you have skeletons with just skulls. There could be lots of reasons why that is. Maybe people who are moving away from the area, they're taking some of their relatives' bones with them. Who knows? So now, if we go back to here, this site itself, when they found it, had stone and earth above it. It's 33 meters in length in total. The total area is 33 meters in length. It's 13 meters wide, and the barrow itself, it looks like the stone there. It looks like they built built like a revetment. So if we go here, and we think we look a bit at annotation. So obviously this is the sort of central area, and then they built this around the outside, and then they filled it with lots of gravel, the gravel and stone. They filled it, and then later on they thought, right, what we're going to do, we're going to make it bigger. We're going to enlarge it. We're going to make this stand out a lot more. So what they're going to do, they're going to add. Sorry, I've got a bit. You can see the other one there. They've added more to it. My drawing is much to be desired. So they're always they're adding to it. They're making it bigger. So there's different casings of stone around this. One of the authors basically says three sets of casing. It looks like there's an inner section, there's an outer section, there's another section as well. Several different lines of revetment to support the rubble beyond, because obviously there was no mortar being used in the construction of this, and it's been added to over time as well. And one of the things that they found actually buried here, which I don't have an illustration of, but is a certain type of pottery that is very well known on Orkney. It's known as Unstonware. So what we're going to do, we weren't going to look at images of this, but what we are going to do, we're just going to go to Google. We're going to type in Unstonware, right? So we're going to type in, if we can get that. No, hang on, we want to stop that. And we want to type in Unstonware. Now, so give you another idea of the pottery as well. Unstonware. And there we go. We should see images of it. And there you go. So you've got these sort of shallow bowls here, Unstonware. They're really intricately decorated, and that is actually Unstonware from the Ness of Brodgar excavations. And this is very familiar. This is very well known type of pottery that's being used on Orkney throughout this period of the Neolithic period. So one thing that we do know is Orkney is developing its own types of pottery. Okay, so obviously this type of pottery is going to spread across Britain. And one thing that is actually said about this pottery and Unstonware is actually from a website online called Orkneyjar. Now, I don't know if anyone has ever looked at this site Orkneyjar online, but it's Orkney JAR, and you can find anything on Orkneyjar associated with Orkney. You know, lots of sites, pottery, a bit stuff about the museum, lots of different artifacts, and those mace head type things that were found at Skara Brae. Now, it says about the Unstonware here, if we read this out, the Neolithic period in Orkney produced two distinct types of pottery: Unstonware and Groovedware. Groovedware is obviously known across other parts of Britain as well, but Unstonware, Unstan. One of the most distinguished and hotly debated questions regarding Neolithic Orkney is the relationship between the two pottery styles. Unstonware takes its name from the stalled Carn of Unston in Stennes. Stennes is on the south side of the mainland of Orkney, where copious quantities of distinct pottery style of Unstonware were found during its excavations in 1858. Now, that's a point. We'll actually mention the Groovedware type of pottery in a moment as well. One thing I wanted to mention, obviously, when we do archaeology, it's easy for me to just keep going and talking and just tell you this and that and all the rest of it. But it's very important to tell you why we call them Unstonware. Again, Unstan. When we find a certain thing in archaeology, right? And the best example is Neanderthal skulls. When Neanderthal skulls were first found, they were found in the Neander Valley in Germany, right? So that's why we call Neanderthals Homo sapien Neanderthals or Homo Neanderthals. We call them Neanderthals because they were first found in the Neander Valley, right? It doesn't mean to say that they originated there, but the first time we identified, that's the name we give it, right? Now, again, this Unstonware pottery is named after the site near Stennes that copious amounts of this pottery were actually found in 1858. And as we can tell, they're shallow, round-bottomed. They're not massive artifacts, shallow, round-bottomed, and with bands of decoration around the rim. Unstonware came to be associated with the early Neolithic structures and stalled cairns in Orkney, like the one at Mid Howe. Now again, this is coming straight out of my Orkneyjar entry that we actually find on here. And the other type of pottery that we have mentioned before, but we'll show you now is if we go there and we go back, we go to the top of the screen and we put in a new tab so we can go back to the other one. So if we type in Groovedware, which again is another important type of pottery which we get from Orkney, which is also found in other parts of Britain as well. So this is in fact what image do I want to go with? I like that image there, but it's not showing you a lot, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to Groovedware pottery. So There's all these little grooves on it. Again, it's mentioned that this type of pottery is also found at Stonehenge. So it's found a lot in Orkney, but it's also found at Stonehenge and other parts of the country. But our Unstonware, again, there we go. We got some nice grooved ware pottery there, different styles there. That's found in Durrington walls, in Wiltshire Way. So yeah, but this is also found in Orkney, right? So as we're at it, we may as well actually say a little bit about this grooved ware. Grooved ware actually has flat bottoms, as opposed to the sort of rounded bottoms that we find with the Unstonware, and decorated with scored grooves, scored into the clay with various instruments. This is also found at the likes of Scarborough and another site which is similar to Scarborough, Barnhouse, which is near the Ness of Brodgar, which is another site that I've been to with Pat. And the grooved ware people buried their dead in increasing numbers and more monumental cairns such as Mice Howe. So one of the things, if we go back to the other, we go back to the other ones, which is our grooved ware. Oh, don't this sound good? Look at that grooved ware. I think that's a reconstruction. Yeah, that's got to be a reconstruction. But it says obviously these very much link between the different sites in Orkney. So what we find is the Unstonware is particularly to do with our type of site that we're looking at in regards to Mid Howe today. We find more and more grooved ware associated with the site of Mice Howe, and we don't know why this earlier pottery fell out of fashion. But it's quite likely it fell out of fashion because it might actually be quite small and it might not have actually stored many things. And having a rounded base is not exactly the best thing but rounded bases have advantages when you're heating things up in fires, for example, and you could just put it, sort of rest it in a sort of hole in the ground. We don't know why they're changing, but they may, some people in Orkney may have used Unstonware, but it's earlier than grooved ware. Some may have continued to use Unstonware, but primarily the grooved ware itself replaces it. Now, I need to mention Pete. When Pete was with me, I think this is the third visit that we had to Orkney. When Pete was with me, we went to a place called Poole on the island of Sanday. And what we were doing, we were looking at a piece of, we were looking at, along the coast, there was strata, there was about 3 or 4 meters of layers. And in those layers, there were Neolithic layers. And in those Neolithic layers, there was both evidence of grooved ware and Unstonware, which is in fact being used at the same time. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information about pottery. So I'm not accused today of being one of those individuals who just thinks about the archaeology in the way of structures rather than the artifacts that we actually find with these individuals. So what we're going to do, we're going to go on for a little bit longer and then we're going to take a break because it's starting to get dark and I need to make sure that some of my animals are in bed, including my little baby Baldric, who was actually playing howe a short while ago. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the plan associated with our site. And there it is, straight on the screen. And again, let's sort of look at this and sort of a weird type of landscape with the modern stuff. So what we've got Unstonware being found in there, and when we think about this, one of the things that we do find is that the pottery itself, the Unstonware, it is found in numbers at this site, as with the site of Unston in Stennes. And the Unston stuff at Stennes was also found in a chambered tomb. encased like mid-howe in this interesting form of this interesting sort of interesting sort of rectilinear oblong shaped thing, long cigar type thing. The one at Unston wasn't as massively complicated like this, right? But there's a similar site that we've also seen, which is accessed from the side rather than the eastern side, with a site that we've already mentioned, known as the Tomb of the Eagles, which is another site that Pat has been with me to. So mid-howe is distinguished from other tombs of its type by having, and this is different from lots of the other sites. And the reason why this is different from lots of the other sites, if you've been looking intensely at my images, and what we're going to do is I want to show you the big difference. The big difference is, in fact, all the other sites that we look at are accessed from the side. This is accessed from the end. So this is why it makes it very different. Going down the cigar rather than sort of going at it from the side. So this is why this site is very, very different. Looking at the long access into the barrow, and lots of things that we think that this wonderful sort of monument, this huge monument. Remember, this is 33 meters long. It's massive, and it's said as well. I don't know if this person's actually getting this right, but it's said as well that you can fit 100-odd people into that monument, and even more, it's said, and that obviously paints into sort of giving you that sort of cathedral type looking monument in the Neolithic period that we've already mentioned. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to mention a little bit to what the author, and let me get it right, James Dyer in Ancient Britain says about this site. So I gotta get this Mac on, because I hopefully I got the right page in here. Hang on a minute. I did have it a moment ago, and yeah, this is what he says about this type of monument. In the most northerly part of the Scottish mainland and the Orkney Islands, these chambered tombs, these stalls in them, and with this sort of entrance as it is, and we've again, having a segmented type of tomb like this, it's also reiterating what I said, very similar to the Tomb of the Eagles on the island of South Ronnersley, and obviously a very, very impressive monument indeed. And want to sort of let's go to the first image that we had. So if we clear that and we stop the annotation and we get that there, go back to the bottom of the screen. That sort of really shows you the monument. That sort of shows off the monument, shows the standing stones there, 2 meters tall, quite flat stones, but they're quarried from along the coast. And it's a readily made site using the material that's from the cliff line that lids off. And you can put them horizontally, you can put them vertically, diagonally, you can break them up, you can create this wonderful monument as you see it today. So what we are going to do now, we're going to take a break. As I said, I've got a couple of things to do in the background. So I'm going to put a kettle on, I'm going to put the animals to bed, I think are going to be sick, but that's something else.
Oh.
And before we do that, I'm going to ask if there's any questions. Right. Don't ask. I feel like I'm going to be sick. I do.
Oh no.
Right. So, yes. Anyway, I can easily lean to the window, so it's fine.
Oh.
Right. So, okay then. I'm going to see that somebody's put something in a chat box here. Was Mid-Howe Broch Neolithic? No, Mid-Howe Broch was, Margaret, it was Iron Age.
Ah.
Why didn't I say that? Flipping heck. Yeah. So what? Yeah, it was Iron Age.
It's just that
So-
you threw it in with all the Neolithic stuff, so I was a bit puzzled.
Yeah, Swandrow, the site further along south, is in fact, you know, that's prehistoric. That's got different dates, and that's another site that we'll look at. There, interestingly enough, one thing I haven't mentioned is we mention archaeology, right? But what we don't do is mention how to visit these things and what archaeological excavations are ongoing. So the ongoing archaeology on Orkney, the Nessa Brodga, which finishes sort of now, but they've got one excavation season next year. And that's the University of Highlands and Islands. The other excavation that continues going is an Iron Age site at actually an Iron Age excavation at a broch by Martin Carruthers. That's at a site known as the Carns. So that's an ongoing excavation which will be going on next year and continue. And we've got the Swandrow excavations, which is near Mid-Howe, and the Swandrow excavations is an ongoing excavation. And at the Swandrow site, they've actually found they've actually found early stuff. They found Iron Age stuff. They found Pictish, and they found Viking archaeology all in the same site. It's very interesting archaeology there. And there's also the University of Islands does other excavations on other sites. So if anyone ever goes to Orkney and they say, what best time of year should I go? Give me a ring. And I would basically say, if I can find out when the excavations are in July, maybe, then I could probably send you a little introduction letter to visit these sites, because it is my university at the end of the day. So you can use my name for once and get something with it, but not free cups of tea. I didn't get free cups of tea either, but me and Pat had free whiskey from Julie Gibson when we went to Rousay. And I think Pat fell asleep on the ferry on the way back, but she can't remember that. She can't remember that. Right. Margaret, anything you'd like to say?
Is the chambered tomb, I thought immediately cow buyers.
Yes, this is what they thought.
Yeah, well, you said horse, but it could, yeah, animal buyers. How long is each chamber?
Well, if we go to the little plan again, and we spend a little bit of time looking at the plan, which I really didn't do because we could have done more because there's a scale on it.
Said
So
that's about 100 bodies in there.
Right. Okay. That's not got a scale on it. So, well, no, you could have actually had 100 visitors.
Visitors. Oh, right.
So basically, if you take that, each stall is about 2.5 meters.
Right, but they.
So if we take the scale there, it's about 2.5 meters on average, 2-3 meters each stall. So the average person is going to be about 1.75. So if you crouched as you got there, I know it's crude, you've got 2 crouched people. So you can actually have people crouched. You can have 2 people crouched in there.
Yeah. I just wondered about the crouched and sitting
yes.
bodies. They didn't have any laid out.
Yes, they did. Well, no, they didn't have any. Well, I said yes, they did. It's the way you interpret it. You can interpret in one way, or you can interpret it in another. But there would have been different traditions And you've got the idea of a sitting skeleton, which is obviously the person's going to be arranged sitting rather than decaying sitting, but that's going to be debatable. But again, that you can clearly see that the stalls, 12 stalls. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12 on the other end. Yeah, that's right, because the other end's been removed. So there's 2 sets of 12 stalls, so there's 24. But the ones occupied are on the north rather than the ones occupied on the south. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got the bench on the north rather than the ones on the south. However, hopefully, I'm going to make sure in my notes after the break, what I'm going to do is I've got to update some of my notes as well after the break, because there's a couple of things missing in my notes. So I've got to. There's other activity going on here, which is important to understanding this site. So I'm gonna get that up as well. So right, anyway, let's just move away from that, and we've had lots of interesting things being said online, and oh God, what was oh yeah, somebody mentioning that it looks like there might be some kind of referendum in Orkney by 2025 that might mean that Orkney might join Norway.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh.
Yes.
Well, to be honest with you, that's not a bad idea. If the state
it did belong to Norway at one time, didn't it?
Until it was given as a wedding gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wedding gift by the King of Norway to the Scots or something. I can't remember. In the 1400s, I think it was. Yeah, 1400s. Right. Okay, then. Let's do David.
What?
Anything you'd like to say, Dave?
No, thank you.
Right. Peter. Pete don't want anything to say. All right then, Pete.
Oh.
He's gone. He's gone. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to get Gina. Anything you'd like to say?
What animal did they think went into those between the stones?
Well,
I mean,
the original, basically, my notes said horses. But what we've got is that the original idea was back to my notes. It says that they originally thought that they were for horses. Horse stalls. They originally thought they were horse stalls, and obviously, whilst you're excavating, they're sticking up, aren't they? So before you actually get down to the layers, people are going to say, "Oh, right, this must be for horses." Right? Oh, we're digging down and we're finding human remains, right? But it's interesting that we're thinking about it that way. And we're thinking about why things were built in a certain way, or were they always meant to be like that? Because let's just talk, and let's just play with the idea, right? You know, you're thinking, well, if this was always built to keep if this was always built to keep human beings, right, then it's fine, right? But as somebody who looks after sheep and animals, if I had a building like this for my animals, right, it would be the Berits, right? This would be the best place you could keep animals, your sheep. You would have had little sheep. You know, my little Orkneys are about metre long, right? That's it. So you could have had a few in these stalls and you could have looked after them, right? That sounds nuts, right? And then it developed into a burial site, right? But that ties in with lots of things that some archaeologists say, like me and Professor Colin Richards. We say that these types of sites may have actually been used for something else before they become burial sites, right? Now, if you I know you like me sort of looking outside the box. So when you look at the work of William Turner in 1797, and he goes to Ueni Church, you can see this online. He paints the Norman church at Ueni, right, with horses, with cows, with I don't know if there's sheep, or chuck all the animals in. There's definitely chickens and cockles wandering around, right? So he's got these animals. He's painting this, and this was a church, right? So you're thinking, hang on a minute, they're keeping animals in there because they were perfect to keep animals. Churches are perfect to keep animals. So what we've done, Drina, I've and actually, if you go to northern Cyprus, lots of the Christian churches that are in the Muslim areas of Cyprus, I don't know if this is the case now, have been used to keep animals. They say, oh, that's really disrespectful, to keep animals in a church, right? But if nobody's going to worship in them, they're perfect to keep animals. So what I'm not saying is that, I'm not saying at all that this monument is ever used to keep animals, right? But as somebody that looks after animals, this would have been perfect to keep animals initially, and then used it for burial. That's the point. This is the key point that I keep reminding you of. Why, oh why, do we always see in the Neolithic period people looking after the dead far better than they're looking after themselves or animals? Can't we think that maybe some of these things may have been used for human habitation or animals in the first place, and then used for burial? It's a useful progression. That's an idea.
Yeah.
Is the only light in there from the entrance?
Well, we don't know what the roof was like, love.
Eh?
Do we? We don't know what the roof was like. What was the roof like?
Oh,
How was the roof? How did the roof work? Right, there may have been light coming in from areas of, we don't know the full aspect. But if you want, like lots of these sites, what we find is the roof already collapsed, right?
yeah.
Now, why are the roofs already collapsed? Well, because somebody's broken into them, because the roofs weren't well made. Well, there's one way you could have a broken roof, is because there were some lights in there to let light in, which would create areas of vulnerability in the roof. That's an idea. Well, we don't get complete ceilings in most of these places.
No.
Not even the Tomb of the Eagles on South Ronnersley had a complete roof.
Mm.
Right? Very few sites have roofs that are complete, other than Peter's foggy holes in Cornwall. Right? We don't have the full picture, so don't jump. And also as well, if you're gonna use these places, you're gonna have light anyway. You look at, we're going off on a tangent, but we're not really. You look at the site of Scarborough, right? There's no windows in these buildings. There aren't any windows, right? Other than building 10, isn't it, or whatever, the one that Gordon Child put a little window in for his stepdaughter, for his niece, whatever, right? But there's no windows in these places, so there's no windows anyway in the living places, as well as places of the dead. And the one thing that these monuments have in common is that there's a way in and there's a way out, or there's just a way in. Actually, I'm wrong. There's usually just a way in, and that's your way out.
That's it, yeah.
So in other words, all the parallels and all the comparisons for these monuments in Orkney anyway are similar. Places that we deem as places of the dead are also the places of the living in another context. It's the way they're interpreted. So okay, it's easy to say, right? Say we didn't find any bodies in this building at all, right? There were no bodies found in them at all, right? In this one building. What would we call it then? Right, there's no bodies in here. Well,
Stables or cowshed.
Exactly. It's only because we find bones in them in the later stages, in the final sense of them being used, that's what we use to describe them. Okay, it's like let's be a bit crass, right? Let's be really crass. Somebody's married all their lives and they come out as gay, right? So then we define them as gay all their lives, but they're not gay all their lives. Part of their life, they were heterosexual, right? But it's in their later part of their life that we define them as gay, right? But that's not fair because they've had a life that they've been straight and they've become gay. That's fine, right? What we do in archaeology, we actually say, they were gay all their lives, right? That's the way we interpret. That's the way we interpret archaeology, and that is wrong. What we've got to do, we've got to look at archaeology like a human being and say that the archaeology is a rich tapestry of evolution, right? Say for example, Pete worked in the chemical industry, then he came out as a teacher. So you know, this is all. These monuments must never be seen as one thing, and we must always have an open mind with all of our history. Because one thing I need to say, and we're still doing questions, and we shouldn't be because we've got to come away from this. If you've got any questions, say it in a moment, and then the other two as well. Well, one thing we've got to remind ourselves of is in Wales, we come to Wales, we look at a building which was once a chapel. It turned into a shop and is now a house. So we define that original chapel as a house, do we? No, we don't.
No.
But we do. This is how archaeologists think. Archaeologists now have to think of the three uses for that building throughout its use, not just the one use. It's dangerous to define something as one thing, and we know that as adult human beings, and we should not do the same in archaeology. Right, Peter, anything you'd like to say?
No.
Right, I think three of us need to put our lights on in a minute. Right, Margaret.
No, I have spoken.
Trina's spoken. The men have spoken. Drugs. Right, Pat.
Just to say that was a great trip we went on. That was really fantastic.
And what I've got to say. Me and Pat can have a little discussion in a minute. What was the most what was the best thing about that trip? And I'm going to give you my best thing, right? What was your best thing about that trip? For 7 days you were with me. I'm going to give you two best things about that trip, right? You give me two.
Well, the Brock I thought was amazing, you know.
Yes.
After we walked from the fantastic air hangar, airplane hangar,
Yeah.
in Howe. Yeah, those two.
Those two. That encapsulates it for you. Well, I would say that you also held a human skull at the Tomb of the Eagles, but forget about that one. So my two would be actually seeing some very ancient grooved ware that had been freshly excavated at the Nest of Brodgar, which was probably some of the earliest pottery and we went to their sort of storeroom. We'd just seen it. It'd just been brought in on a blue crate, hadn't it, Pat? And we were looking at it, and me and Kathy were looking at it, and Martin saying, that's pottery there, and Kathy's going, no, it's not. It is pottery because there's grooves in it, right? But it was a really thick thing. And the other thing as well is, this is going to sound so numpty, right? When we got to Orkney, the weather was so bad that first day, just as I was taking everybody out. I watched Clash of the Titans on TV, and somebody come in and said, oh, why are you watching Clash of the Titans? You can watch that anytime. I said, I haven't watched television in 5 years. So that's what made my time in Orkney. But it was actually being on Orkney, amongst the history and archaeology, amongst all the great stuff on Orkney that made it.
Nice how amazing. The carvings on the wall, the Norsemen had carved jokes or messages,
Yes.
What messages had they carved?
We're not talking about what they were doing with women in there.
Oh.
I was here.
Yeah, that's what we get. I was you with a woman, that type of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Skara Brae was my best bits.
Skara Brae. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I actually, every time I go to Skara Brae, I see something new, and it's just like I forget about Skara Brae. It takes so bloody long to walk from the Tourist Information Centre over to actually the site. It's about a kilometre. But it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's always raining when I'm there. Right, okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break. Well, we're going to take a 10-minute break actually, and about that, I've got to get some stuff sorted, and I will be back soon, folks.
Okay.
I may be gone.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well,
I'll try to hang in.
Oh, yeah, Pat, hang in until 9:30 then. So, you've got to hang in until 9:30. Pat, we'll be back at 9:15. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Go and get yourself a coffee now.
Don't drink coffee this time of day.
Oh, decaf.
Still the same, isn't it?
Decaf, yeah.
Oh yeah, I got to be honest with you. I agree with you, Pete. That's the only thing I agree with you on. It's absolutely horrible.
What's the point of it?
Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't understand you. I didn't understand this. It's fine. I know. You fight. Honestly, don't get what you want. Right? Oh, don't fight me. Don't fight me.
Hmm.
Hmm.
until you slip to the aliens. Oh. Oh, gas. Oh, you got to jump in. Okay, now. Everything else. I'm not looking now. Do that.
You'll get loads of, oh, Pete's not there. Mm.
Right, let's get started, folks. See, Pat, are you still awake?
Yep, I'm awake.
Okay, good. Oh yeah, I was. Oh yeah, I was looking. I wanted to add. I wanted to add some archaeological news from today in this. So, archaeological news. That's it. I wanted to get something new today. Let's just see. All right, what have we got? So, unknown anatomical modern human lineage discovered from 40,000 years ago. Oh, that sounds right up our street. Bedroom used by slaves found by archaeologists near Pompeii. Oh my God, we're lost. Right, okay. I think we'll do both. Oh, you've got to see this. Oh, hang on a minute. We're gonna get this on you. I got this was a last minute thing, so we're gonna chuck this up on you. If I type in archaeological news, hopefully I can get that on there as well. Archaeological news, go. Oh, it's on here as well. So we're going to have archaeological news, a bedroom used by slaves, and an unknown anatomical modern human lineage discovered, dating back to 40,000 years ago. Right, let's go. Let's go for it, folks. Let's do it. And then we're gonna go back to our mid-how. So right, okay. I've got to find out where I am. Zoom. Right, okay, folks. We're back to it. And it's 9:18. That wasn't a very long break, was it? So let's just crack on. So I thought, as we've been doing pretty well these past few weeks, I knew we were missing something this week. And I'd like to mention as well, other than Claire's elephant, I would like to mention that anyone who is interested, we've got our Monday evening sort of 5-week thing starting on the first Monday of September. And also, finally, the other thing as well as I wanted to mention is that our Illicit Pillars on its way. The newsletter is being sent out by wonderful Rona in the next few days, so that'll be with you. And I would like to, I'm building a little laboratory. Not one of Claire's laboratories where you get lost. I'm building a little laboratory where all the artifacts will be set out, ready for publication and all the rest of it. If anyone ever wants to come down here to help out with any of that, then you can sit alongside with me, going through all these artifacts, listening to turkeys gobbling. Right, so what we're going to do now, right up Drina Street. Right, okay, so we're and Margaret's jokes. Right, so here we go. We've got a couple of things on the screen. We've got, I think we will do the slave thing first, and that unknown anatomical. I've not done any of these yet, so I've look at that there, and bedroom used by slaves. Look at that. So obviously, what they've got, I think they've put plaster of Paris. Those artifacts, I think, are voids filled with plaster of Paris. I think there is. I haven't actually read this. Bedroom used by slaves found by archaeologists near Pompeii. Archaeologists discovered a small bedroom in a Roman villa near Pompeii that was almost certainly used by slaves, throwing light on their lowly status in the ancient world. The room was found at the Civita Giuliana Villa, some 600 meters from the north of the walls of Pompeii, which was wiped out by a volcanic eruption of Mount Vesuvius nearly 2,000 years ago. So those people would have had they would have had the ashes and stuff and the gas before people being slightly protected in the walls of Pompeii would have had it. So they would have had it roughly about 12:30, 1 o'clock on the 24th of August in the year AD 79. It contains 2 beds, only one of which was a mattress, only one of which had a mattress, 2 small cabinets, and a series of urns and ceramic containers in which the remains of 2 mice and a rat were found. So that would be your dormouse, probably. These details once again underline the conditions of precarity and poor hygiene in which the lower echelons of society lived during the time. There were no traces of grates, locks, or chains to restrain the room's inhabitants. It seems, hang on, what does it say? It seems that control was primarily exerted through the internal organization of servitude, rather than physical barriers and restraints. Excavations at the villa are carried out between 1907 and 1908, and again from 2017, when police realized the site was being plundered by illegal diggers. And it goes on to say different things, but if we go back to that there, that looks like to me that that's wooden, that's wood that's obviously been burnt, and there's void there, and that's been filled with plaster of Paris. Yes, it is. It's been filled. So those voids have been filled with plaster of Paris, giving us an idea of, and there's a bench there as well. So that's great. So the other article of the week I wanted to do is the one that was there, which is today. So I don't know anything about this at all. So yeah, we'll agree to that. I don't know what I'm downloading. Unknown anatomical modern human lineage uncovered from 40,000-year-old hip bone. Fossil found in France is not quite modern human and not quite Neanderthal. We've got something new. Wow, today. Well, 24 hours. And there's a single bone there, the size of a €2 coin. Love it. Modern human Neanderthal. So it's saying, so there's the artifact. Obviously, the Neanderthal has a slight more of a sort of more, more, I don't know. Anyway, difficult to say what's going on there. But anyway, that sort of hip bone there, little one. And is that a hip bone? Yeah, hip bone. A hip bone fossil found in France may have belonged to an early lineage of modern human Homo sapiens, one subtly different from present-day modern humans. A new study finds the fossils suggest that a group often thought of as solely Neanderthal in Europe may have consisted of Neanderthals and modern humans living together. Really? It's almost as if this is a surprise. We've known this for ages, folks. It's just like it's like almost as if science is saying, actually, yeah, this is what happened. Previous research in Europe suggested that the final phases of Neanderthal culture might have been a group called the Châtel-Perronians. Love it. Artifacts at the Châtel-Perronian sites, which date to 44,500 to 41,000 years ago, extend from northern France, Spain to the Paris Basin. Great controversy over the years from scientists who argue that artifacts were actually modern human in nature. In this new study, they're saying that this is very, very different. Scientists investigate a newborn's hip bone. Oh, right. An ilium, one of the 3 bones that make up the pelvic girdle. This bone, about 1 inch wide, was found in a later previously dated to, around 41,000 years ago, if you get the mean average there. Scientists had found other remains that DNA reveal were Neanderthal in origin. And there you go. So new archaeology, new finds, new information. Right, talking about new archaeology, new finds, I got some. What we're going to do with the rest of this lecture now, we're going to get back to my images. And I do believe it's 9:25, and medieval girl found buried with bound ankles, likely so she could not return from the grave. There you go. Yeah, they typically did that in the medieval period because they thought that some people were cursed, and they may put boulders on top of them, or they might put stones in their mouths or smash their teeth out and all sorts of things so that people didn't return from the grave. That's what that's about. So anyway, where are we? Let's get back to where we were. And what I would like to do is stop the screen, and I would like to Pat's still with us, which is great. Pat, let us know when you've got to go, and let's go to this. And the next bit of the section today is just sort of giving you some of the backstory about the wonderful site that we've been looking at. But before we actually go there, right, let's look at that sort of trailing down. So that's the entranceway, looking down there, looking down the monument itself. So right, okay, where's my, oh, there's my information. I nearly lost my information, which would have been good. There you go. So again, this is the, so you've got this is the eastern entrance going down rather than into the monument from the side. So this is down the axle going into the monument, down the passage. And so what I do is I jump from these notes to the other final notes that I've actually got, which gives a lot more detail. It gives a little bit of detail about the finding of the site, which we want to know. So that's what we're going to do. So again, this site, so the remains of 25 individuals found in this tomb. Now, 7 of the 12 chambers have side shelves, right? So if we go to the plan, that can help us. So there we go. So let's go to the plan, right? So if we go, we can see them there out of the 12 there. So we go from this end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, the problem is when you sometimes as an archaeologist, when you read the reports, and also that I've done access analysis, and which I see things differently. So I see 24 chambers. I don't see 12, right? So because the passage is going down the middle, so that means that to me that's 24 chambers, not 12. However, if we go with the notes, it says that if the northern parts of the chambers, 7 of them have shelves, in them, referred to as side shelves. The bodies were found in groups of 2 to 4 on 6 of the shelves. Several of the skeletons were in crouched position, crouched up, like sort of later skeletons in the medieval period on the shelves, with their backs to the side wall and heads resting against the supporting pillars, which makes perfect sense. It's almost as if you're crouched up against the supporting pillars. Now, we had a discussion a few weeks ago, which is directly linked to this, because when we had this discussion, didn't we, that people in the past, there's evidence that people in the past didn't lie flat on their backs. They lay sort of sitting, right? We had this discussion a few weeks ago. And so that idea of being crouched up might go to a tradition of lying in a crouched position when you're alive, or you might, as the description there, skeletons sitting up, right? So there's evidence of some of these skeletons sitting up, and this is not a good plan that we're looking at, right? It's slightly, oh, hang on a minute, we've got a much clearer one. Hang on a minute. If we go to, oh, there's nothing in them, never mind. Let's go back to there. It's not exactly clear, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, go back to what we were saying. And it said that other groups of bones had been heaped into the centers of the shelves and swept under them. So, or swept under them. So there were piles of some bones on the shelves within those 7 there, or some bones had been swept under them, suggested that earlier burials had been moved to accommodate later ones. Now, me, as an analysing archaeologist, I would like to say that there's 5th columnists in this. There's a 5th column, right? And when me and Pat went there, Julie Gibson said on the left-hand side there that in the later periods going into the Bronze Age, that Bronze Age people had accessed underneath, right? And they may have actually put the bodies underneath the shelves because they were in the way. They may have actually used this as storage, right? a bit like, you know, when we talk about souterrains, well, it's a ready-made souterrain, isn't it? It's a ready-made sort of place under your house. If you could think of a house above this on top of a mound, which would have had great views. So that's later on, after the Neolithic context had been sealed, reopened. In a few cases, only the skulls were present. In one instance, the long bones had been piled together with the skull placed on top. So for me, in a way, we're talking about long bones. We're talking about maybe the bones may have been collected from elsewhere and then placed into this context. We see that with some archaeological sites, don't we? That bodies have been exposed, sky burials, and the birds have pecked at them, and the skulls have survived long bones. But there's also other contexts where bodies have been in one burial context and everything gathered together and put in here, right? Or they may have been wrapped up in sheets and so on. Now, one of the things that led to these lectures that we're doing on prehistory was actually David, because we looked at mummification on the Hebridean Islands, and David said, I want to do more of that. And I thought, it's in the prehistory period. And I thought, right, we're going to do prehistory. So we'll be doing that, you know, mummification and, you know, how bodies were actually treated in the prehistoric period. So that's all to come. But back to this site, bones from, thank you. Anyway, thank you for that, David, giving us new direction. This is quite exciting. Bones from a variety of animals were found as well. Variety of animals, really interesting. So this goes back to, you know, this other idea that it may have been used for something else before bodies had been placed in there. And before we talk about some of the other bones and we go on to the last bit of my notes, right? Why is it the northern, these from seven, these seven on the left along seven of the 12 on the northern side, stall 7 of the 12 on the northern side, why is it they've got shelves, and why is it there's no shelves on the southern side? Don't you think that's strange? That's really odd. For me, that's really odd. It don't make sense, because as you walk down, right, if we go back to the image, as you walk down, there's an equal proportion of space between the stalls as you walk down, right? So this is, we're actually walking down from the western end rather than the eastern end. We're walking down on the furthest end. You can see that the space on the stalls on the south and the north side is actually the same, but there's no shelves in the ones on the southern side. That to me is unusual. The bones that they've actually found at this site are bones of ox, sheep. Now, oxen would not be a familiar animal for me to think about when I'm talking about Rousay. Sheep are, because I keep sheep, right? I keep the type of sheep that were actually on the island. So ox, but we've got ox bones found there, ox bones, sheep bones found there, bones of cormorant found there, bones of buzzard found there, the skua found there as well, eagle, the gannet, carrion crow bones, right? Okay, actually, carrion crow, I would say that's the grey-necked crow rather than the carrion crow, because it would look the same. Anyway, that's me. Fish bones from bream and wrasse were also present. Bream are not found this far north today, suggesting that the waters around Orkney during the Neolithic must have been several degrees warmer than today. Interesting. So we got that little fact. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go with my other information, which I've got up on my screen here, which closes this site a little bit better, right? It tells you a little bit more of the back history of this site. It's not long, right? We will be finishing a lot earlier today, but we haven't had questions yet. So again, looking at that. And I do believe I've got a black and white image as well at the end. Hang on a minute. Let's get that. Oh, there. So that puts a little bit more context right? That's looking, I think maybe before they put no, this is actually in the hangar now, but this is quite an early photograph anyway. I think it's probably from the 50s, this one. So it's looking from the western end where they gained access in the Bronze Age, right? And obviously that's the entrance there. And if you've noted, the other thing that we didn't discuss as well, which I would like to do quickly before I do these last bits and notes, right? If you look, you can clearly see that on the eastern end, the grey, those things there, they clearly blocked it up. They blocked it up on the eastern end. The passage has been blocked up, but obviously for the sake of us today, as we're looking down, as we're looking down from the western end, it's sort of not that open, but it's sort of open, right? So it goes until the early 1930s. Near the mound of Mid Howe in southwest Rousay was a large oblong grassy knoll, right? That's what existed there. Nobody knew. This is why I'm saying on Orkney, there's lots more of these monuments that haven't been excavated. We haven't excavated all of them, and there may be another site like this which is even better preserved, which is wow, which is even better preserved than that. We don't really know. There's some of the islands as well that we haven't really explored. So this is a grassy knoll. They excavated this, measuring 100 feet long and about 30 feet wide. That's where we're getting the 3 meters from, long. The mound was crested by a modern dry stone dike, right? A dike is a wall. All right, don't go there. Right, me and Pat, it was Julie going, that over there's a dike, but it's a wall. Yeah, but that's what we call walls in Orkney. Dikes are walls. Right, there you go. A dry stone wall, the dry stain dike. There was a wall running across it. In 1932, the landowner and whiskey magnate Walter Grant of Grant Whiskies of Trumland House began a series of excavations that gradually revealed the remains of a stalled burial chamber. Right, now this is why it was originally thought that the stalls were actually for keeping animals, right? And being that it was excavated by a non-archaeologist, maybe we don't have all the information that we could have had from the site. Now, we do know it at least dates to 5,500 years ago. That's why I'm given a 5,000 to 6,000 year date. They compared the structure. Now that this is what Walter Grant said, a long, narrow byre, right? A long, narrow byre with bloody thick walls. Now, I'm going to go off my notes a minute. And, for me, if we go back to the plan as well, let's go back to when you think about it, you think about, there's the cross section there, rather interesting cross section. You can see the shelves of the northern end. Obviously, we know that there were more shelves in them, right? And we're thinking, well, for a burial site, it's bloody, it's a lot of stones gone into it, right? It's not a Wednesday afternoon putting stone. It's a lot of work, right? Why they needed to put a lot of stone around it, I don't know. But there's something that maybe we don't know. The thing is, when you think about it, the stones, the stall stones, and the dry, if we look at the dry stone walls, if we look at the dry stone walls inside, which we really haven't examined properly, right? Look at those dry stone walls. They almost look as if they're self-supporting, which they are. They're dry stone. So why do you need all this other stone to? That's a great mystery. Again, referring to it as a long, narrow byre. Working down through the stones from the collapsed roof, again, brackets collapsed roof, the excavators uncovered 23-meter long chamber internally, divided by upright flagstones into a series of 12 stalls either side, north and south, south and north. Each of these stalls contained a stone bench. Now, no, No, only 7 of them contained a stone bench on which bodies had been laid, or stone benches that we know about. The problem is this is being excavated without proper archaeological supervision. Now we want to know about the 25 individuals, and I got the information for that, folks. Thank you very much. The 25 individuals, we get 17 adults, right? 6 youths. So, you know, don't know, 10, 12-year-olds. 6 youths, 2 children under 4. And these were found within the context of the Khan, right? The corpses had been placed, some of them with their backs facing the wall, right? Now, those at the southern end of the cells lay on their left side, and those at the north end on their right. So you can imagine, okay, when you're looking at this and trying to work out perspective, if we take away south and north, some obviously this idea of facing the wall, you know, facing the uprights, the head, the skull facing the uprights. Only 4 deposits were found under the shelves and 3 on the floor, without any structural arrangements. So in other words, they're just chucked underneath. Because no human remains were found in the first 4 cells. So if we go back to the so in other words, as you go in, right, on the right and also on the left, there's no burials on the left at all. On the right, the first 4 on the right, the first 4 cells on the right, they found no human remains at all. Which again, what is going on right now? One thing that we can think about, and I can remember Julie saying this, that no. So if we go back to the plan again, that the first 4 there on the right hand side as you go in, it said that it was suggested that the bodies were placed in the cells near the entrance and left till the flesh had rotted away. Well, there's no evidence for that, and I don't believe that either, because you would, in that case, you'd find the phalanges, you'd find finger bones, you'd find something, you'd find the odd tooth, you'd find something. Nothing was found there, unless it was cleaned out too well by the excavators. Now, sometime later, the bones were collected and deposited further inside the structure. Okay, that's an idea. Without the rubble that filled the cairn, the excavators found the remains of cattle, sheep, and also they found the remains of red deer antler. I told you there's a little bit more. Fish bones, and there's another little bit of detail missing, limpet shells. Now, we know how fond Mesolithic people and Neolithic people were of limpet shells. Limpet shells again. Why are limpet shells and fish bones in here, right? That's interesting. Were they part of later archaeology, or were they placed in there at that time, or were they evidence from an earlier period, or maybe are just going in there feasting? I looked at a video I did earlier on today on YouTube about the Etruscans. And those that know me well, you know, I love Etruscan culture. I love how Etruscans live and think of death at the same time. They build their homes above ground as they build their homes below ground, right? But I'm thinking maybe Neolithic people did the same thing thousands of years earlier, and they went down visiting their loved ones, saying, "Look, I'm having a limpet shell. You know, how are you today?" Right? And maybe they sat opposite. Maybe they sat on the floor opposite on a beanbag, you know, bit of hay. Maybe they sat opposite or something like that. You know, it's a way of looking at this. You know, and then it says this is why, like other Orkney cairns, the finds hint at either ritual feasting around the site or perhaps grave goods buried along with the dead. Well, you know what? I'm not going to waste a couple of good limpets. You know, it's going to. It's a bit like eating chewing gum. But anyway, let's not waste fish. Let's just eat them. I've gone out to catch them. And it's just like visiting Auntie Cecil or whoever's buried there, or Uncle Eric. Other artifacts in the rubble include 5 hammer stones. Why? A stone pestle and 3 stone implements. Right? That's what was described at the time. After the tomb had fallen out of use, 2 corpses were buried into the collapsed rubble. Right? So later on, people are being buried there. Right? And the first was a man was buried. Was first you got a man being buried, and then you got another one being buried likewise. And it's described that the later bodies were actually buried from above, basically not buried in because it had all been filled in. Later burials, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the right hand side, right? That empty one. So obviously in the Neolithic period, there's nothing buried in them. Later on, there's 2 bodies buried in there from above. So people are still burying at this site well after the Neolithic period. So we've got a man and a woman being buried there. And this is in like a rough arrangement. They sort of buried from above. There's obviously some collapse happened, buried from above. And then finally, what I would say is from the descriptions of Julie. If we just finish on this is later archaeology. What we find is that in this area here, there's evidence of a later building from the Bronze Age, and there's evidence again to say that some of the Bronze Age evidence was found in this area. So obviously the Bronze Age people gained access. They used it as a souterrain, maybe for storage. They may have mucked around with some of the bones. Maybe more of it was open. Maybe more of it was collapsed. We don't know, but it's used in a later period because it's up on a high point. It would have been perfect away from the damp ground. The Bronze Age is getting damper. The Bronze Age is similar temperature to us. We know from the RAS itself that the temperatures were higher in the Neolithic period, 5,500, 6,000 years ago. By the time we get to the Bronze Age, 4,000 years ago, things have changed. They don't get really cold in the Bronze Age until 3,500 years ago, which is probably similar to where we are today. And on that note, I'm just going to quickly bumble through the images again quickly, and then I'm going to say, are there any questions? And I'm going to start with Pat before she goes. Right?
I'm going to go. No questions.
You're going to go. Oh, go on, go on.
Okay.
Have you got any questions before you go, Pat?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, Pat. I will
Thanks.
see you next week, lovely. See you next week. See you next week. So what we're going to do, before we go any questions, I just want to basically say a reminder, if you do go to the site, it's on the island of Mid-Howe. Not on Mid-Howe, the island of Rousay. The site is Mid-Howe. There it is. It's near the ferry port. You can easily find it. I think there's no key. You can go in there, just wander into the site. You'll be there for at least half an hour just looking at the information. Don't really need the information, just look in there, right? And again, these stalls, again, you go armed with a little bit of a plan. You go in through that door, beautiful site, aircraft hangar protecting this site. I'm loving it. And again, I don't know. Oh, there we go. Somebody mentioned online, could it be a semi-detached housing back in the day? Do you know, the thing is, yeah, you may laugh, you may joke, but I'm thinking this is so well built. You know, that's where they would have accessed in the Bronze Age, right? It's so well built, and you're thinking, look at that architectural feature there. Nobody's telling us about that. Hang on a minute, that little architectural feature there, and there it is. It's repeated there, right? Is that something to do with the roof? What is that? And look at the shape of that stone. These are very similar to the stones that are in the circle at Stennis and the ring of Brodgar, that they're slanted diagonal, and then you've got flat-headed stones. Are these to support some? What is going on? That's a really interesting architectural feature, that is. And again, going back to this final one and thinking, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. And on that note, we're going to call that a day, and we're going to see if there is any questions from anybody. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to start off with David, and then we're going to see if there's anything that our friends online have said. We've had a few people online. We've had Mark, we've had Elise, we've had that person from China, you know, and Jardin's been online as well. There's been a few. David, anything you'd like to say? Where's
Has he
David
gone?
gone?
Has he gone?
Mm.
Oh.
I just said, David, is there anything you'd like to say? And he went.
He probably misunderstood.
Okay,
He's
fair. I don't know what I don't know what he misunderstood. Oh God.
I've left you a chat.
Well, I hope David hasn't got upset. Right.
Look
Margaret,
at me
you couldn't-
chat. I've left you a message.
you couldn't get a horse in there. It wouldn't be able to turn around. It would have to back out. That's a good point.
Yeah, or a cow. I wondered if, I wonder, whatever it was, if it was a tomb, if it had multiple uses, if there would have been a caretaker living there looking after it, like a master of ceremonies. Perhaps it was just one person's home that just took care of everything.
It's a very interesting site in that so much effort has been expended for people, you know, buried people. It's just really odd, you know, and it's just that idea how people lived in the Neolithic compared with how they bury people. They must have, you know, surely somebody turned around and said, oh, you know, this is the point. We're burying people like this. Why can't we live like this?
Well,
No,
somebody must have been looking after it, mustn't they?
Yeah, well, obviously, we don't think about that, but maybe there was a caretaker. Exactly.
Yeah, who lived there.
Exactly.
And maybe that's what all the animal bones were and stuff. It was the things that he was eating.
Yeah.
Or
So,
it could have been kind of just on the fringes of society and not really thought about until it was needed. Or it could have been a big part of society. We just don't know, do we?
Yeah, we presume it's a big part of society because they're the biggest monuments.
It
But
was
if you
big,
want to,
wasn't it?
if you looked at this equation, Skara Brae is 10 meters there. This is 10 meters there, but Skara Brae is miles away. But what I'm trying to say, if these two things were alongside each other, right, we could understand that they lived in a wonderful way and they buried in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
It's just trying to put the evidence together. So, right, okay. Somebody's been listening in the car all the way. Right, okay then. Margaret, anything else you'd like to say?
No, it's all a big puzzle, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
But I don't think you could get big animals in and out of there. I think it would have been a bit problematic.
No,
you couldn't get big. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. I agree. Right, anything else, Margaret?
No, that's it.
Okay, right.
Interesting about the pots. We should do more about that kind of stuff.
And we should try and work out more about David. Why did he disappear? As I'm just saying, right, David, he disappears.
I think he's a bit hard of hearing. He probably thought you said goodbye.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Gina, you'll have to give him a call to find out if he's okay.
Maybe
Right.
you've really annoyed him and upset him.
How have I done that?
I don't know, but he might have just taken umbrage at something.
I don't know. I
You
don't know.
upset me sometimes, and Pete and Drina.
Yeah, but you tell me I've upset you. My God, then you pay for these bloody classes. Flipping out. Right, Drina, anything you'd like to say?
Only that I was thinking that the food that was in there, the bones, was probably eaten there. And then it occurred to me that it's either Japan or China where they have I'm not sure what is it, an Ancestors Day where they go to where their ancestors are buried and have a meal with them.
I think they do that in the Caribbean as well. They do it in lots of places.
Yeah. I like that idea.
Actually, to be honest with you, we should do more of that. I don't see why we don't. It's just like I think in modern society, in Western society, it's almost as if let's just be, somebody dies, we've got to bury them and we've got to move on. And I'm sorry, I don't go along with that. I really don't. I think that's abhorrent. I just, why because somebody's died, why should we forget about them? And I just really, I really gets on my tit, right? Somebody there was I get this thing that is called Quora, right? And somebody said, somebody did they said, all right, I've got a friend who keeps saying that her husband can't get over the loss of his son, right? What do I do to what do I do to sort of get him over it? And the person turns around and says, oh well, just leave him, right? And then your husband can meet somebody perfectly nice who can understand about the loss of his own son, and you can bugger off and hug the cactuses. And that's a good point. It's just like I think we've got every right to keep somebody alive after they've gone, and I'm a great believer in that, and I love this. What you just said, Margaret, about sort of was it Drina, celebrating people is actually what we should do.
Yeah.
I think that is really important. Okay, so somebody's given me a donation online, so that's good.
Oh.
That's brilliant. Right, so Peter, anything you'd like to say?
No, just that the geology of the area lends to that sort of construction and gave them the opportunity to make that sort of thing fairly straightforward without having to quarry or things like that, because the layers of rock would be there available for removal and used to build that sort of thing.
It's an amazing site.
Yeah.
Amazing.
One other thing I'd like to say.
Yeah, go on,
Have you
Pete.
seen the photographs of the late king, our king? Not the late king, our king that we have at the moment.
Yeah,
He's
go
a
on.
dead spit of his granddad.
Is he?
It could
Is
be
he?
his granddad, the pictures.
Oh.
What, George the Sixth?
Yeah,
Do you think?
Do you think?
I think
George the
so,
Sixth.
yeah.
I don't see
George
it.
the Sixth didn't even
Haven't
live
seen
that
both.
long.
Haven't seen both. Yet they
I think he's more like his mother.
All right.
you see the side on the photograph of his grandfather, and then the same side-on picture from him. They're almost identical,
Oh.
in my view, anyway.
I got to ask the question: what the frigging hell has that got to do with it with this site?
I just thought I would throw it in. That was all, just
Put it in the mix.
as a matter of interest.
So, you know what I'm going to say? What I'm going to say, right? If you had made that comparison when Charles III was actually the same age as when George, then I would go with it. But I'm looking at these images. I'm not sure. I think you've been smoking with the daisies.
I wonder why they always bring up the same old names, the Williams and James and Charles and Elizabeth, and why don't they go off piste a bit?
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Fred.
Yes.
Julian.
Frederick. No, Frederick's quite, that's
Yeah.
Russian, isn't it?
Why do we have Gay? King Gay.
There we are.
King Carl.
Yeah, well, we've had that.
Have we had a King Carl?
Well, no, they have in the continent, yeah.
Oh, have they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carl with a C, that was though, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Carl with a
yeah.
C, yeah.
No, Peter, no, I don't. I think you're smoking some green stuff on that one. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Talking about green stuff, I'm gonna thank everybody for. Oh yeah, here we go. And finally, someone says online. They says, look at Neom in Saudi Arabia. The line. It's a line where the super rich and powerful will live, so we can't cross the line. What? I don't know. Obviously there's a place in Saudi Arabia where the super rich live, and you can't go there. Right? That's fine. It's a bit like Barry. You don't want to go to Barry because you're too poor. Right? Okay. Okay then. Anyway, thanks for everybody watching online,
Yeah.
and thanks for everybody. What are you guys? And hopefully we will see you all next Tuesday.
Yeah. Thank
Bye.
you. Very
Okay.
interesting.
Anyway, and if nobody else has got anything else to say, thank you,
Right.
Gina. Thank you, Margaret, and thank you,
Bye.
Peter.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Night-night. Night-night, Gina. You have a good one. And anyone else online, I'm going to gnaw at a biscuit now. Thank you, everybody watching online. It's been really, really appreciated for everybody's continued support. I'm going to have a biscuit. Whilst people think about anything else they want to ask me. And that's it, really. Oh. Power. Power is power. There you go. Right, okay then. I'm gonna if whilst people are working out what they're doing online. So the questions online were, this was both from Margaret. She said, was Mid-Howe Broch Neolithic? Right. So again, oh right, and quickly, is that the glass mirrored thing they're building? By all. Oh right. I don't know, is it? Is it? I don't know. It must be. It must be. Right, okay. Well, I was going to quickly look. Right, anyway, here we go. What it was, Margaret said, was Mid-Howe Broch Neolithic? No, Mid-Howe Broch, which is 500 meters away from Mid-Howe Khan, is actually Iron Age. And also, we will. And also, she also asked, Margaret said, you couldn't get a horse in there. It wouldn't be able to turn around. It would have to back out. And yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, a horse would have to back out. So that's on the chat box. That's the chatting there on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's good. Well, that's it. That's all my stuff done on chat box. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Sorry, I'm scribbling with the screen now. Thanks for your support tonight. And I'm going to say good night, everyone. And thanks for your support. And thanks for the donation as well. Really, really appreciate it. Everything helps. And cool. And Send in the Cloud by Stephen Sondheim. The VOCES 8 version is brilliant. Along with every other version. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to call it a night now and really appreciate your support. As I say, don't forget to like and subscribe. A few more likes around there would be better. And that's it. I'm off. Night night. Night night.